The year is 1925. The world is still recovering from the devastation of the Great War. Jazz is playing in the streets of New York. Empires stretch across continents. Automobiles are just beginning to change the way people live. And in the quiet corners of laboratories, scientists are tinkering with machines that most believe are nothing but fantasy. Machines meant to escape the Earth itself. Now imagine this. Instead of decades of delay, humanity succeeds. A rocket built not in the 1960s but in the roaring 1920s thunders into the sky. The newspapers shout with disbelief, "Man reaches Mars!" Picture the scene. Men in clunky, riveted steel suits step onto the red dust of Mars. The first colony is little more than domes stitched together like circus tents, powered by steam boilers and fueled by coal brought from Earth. But it works. Humanity has leapt across the void, not in the digital age, but in the mechanical age. How would history have unfolded if Mars was colonized not in our future, but in our past? Would nations fight for Martian land like they fought for colonies on Earth? Would wars be even more catastrophic, or would the human race unite under the banner of a second home? And more importantly, how different would your life be today if humans had already spent a century growing up on 2 planets instead of 1? This is the story of the world that could have been if humanity colonized Mars 100 years ago. Let's start with politics. If Mars had been colonized in the 1920s, it would not have been a mission of peace, it would have been a mission of power. The British Empire, the United States, Germany, the Soviet Union, all of them would have wanted a piece of Mars. Imagine colonial governors not in Africa or India, but on the plains of the Valles Marineris. Mars would have been carved up into territories just like Earth was. New London might have stood beside New Berlin, while the Soviet Union built their Martian People's Colony. The Cold War might not have been about missiles in Cuba, it might have been about military bases on Mars. The nuclear standoff of the 20th century could have taken place not just on Earth, but across 2 planets. A red Cold War with red dust. Now think about the technology. To colonize Mars in 1925, we'd need rockets capable of interplanetary travel. That means that rocketry, computing, metallurgy, all of these would have been forced to leap forward decades earlier. By the 1940s, instead of just inventing radar and jet engines, humanity might have had nuclear-powered spacecraft. By the 1960s, instead of landing on the Moon, we might have been terraforming sections of Mars. And by the 2000s, or maybe we'd already be looking at colonies on Europa or Titan, our phones, our medicine, even the internet itself. These might have appeared decades earlier, driven by the brutal necessity of survival on Mars. But what about the people? Colonists born on Mars in the 1930s or 40s would have been different. Mars has lower gravity, only about 38% of Earth's. Children raised there might have grown taller, thinner, with weaker bones, and possibly even different heart and lung development. They would not just be Earthlings living on Mars. Within a few generations, they would have become Martians, humans shaped by another world. Now think about culture. Martian music, Martian slang, Martian art. Would they see themselves as pioneers, rebels, or simply another branch of humanity forgotten by Earth? Perhaps the first great revolution of Mars would not be against gravity, but against colonial powers back on Earth. Colonizing Mars early would also mean new economies. Mining would be the first industry, iron, nickel, maybe even rare elements in Martian soil. Agriculture would follow, using greenhouses and early hydroponics. But the real money might have been in energy. Mars has vast deposits of carbon dioxide and frozen water. Imagine coal-powered colonies transforming into early nuclear colonies, and then into massive solar farms stretching across the Martian deserts. By today, Mars could have been not just a scientific outpost, but a full economic hub. Martian exports might include rare metals or even biotechnologies developed for survival in harsh environments. And Earth? Earth might have depended on Mars just like it once depended on colonies across the oceans. Of course, humanity rarely does anything without conflict, or World War II might not have been confined to Europe and Asia. Imagine battles fought on the Martian frontier, tanks rolling across dust plains, airships fighting in thin skies, Hitler's Germany, Stalin's Soviet Union, Roosevelt's America, all vying not just for dominance on Earth, but for survival on Mars. The Cold War too would have been transformed. Instead of the space race being about the Moon, it would have been about who controls Mars. Sputnik might have been launched not to orbit Earth, but to spy on Martian colonies. The Cuban Missile Crisis might have been nothing compared to a Martian missile crisis. Would nuclear war have happened sooner, or would humanity, spread across 2 planets, have been forced to find peace to avoid mutual destruction? Now here's something you may not have thought of: religion. What happens to faith when humans live on 2 worlds? Would religion splinter? Would new Martian sects emerge, seeing Mars as the promised land? Perhaps some would view it as sacred, while others would see it as proof that humanity needs no gods, that we are gods of our own destiny. Philosophy too would change. A Martian-born child looking up at Earth might ask, "Am I truly human if I will never set foot on the cradle of humanity?" But the concept of identity itself might fracture. Earthlings and Martians, brothers, but also strangers. Finally, let's think about Earth. Would Earth be better or worse if Mars had been colonized? On one hand, resources from Mars might have alleviated poverty, driven innovation, and united nations. On the other, Mars might simply have been another battlefield, another colony to exploit, another source of human suffering. But one thing is certain: if Mars had been ours for 100 years, we would not be dreaming of a second planet today. We would already be dreaming of the stars. Now let's wrap this up. If humanity had colonized Mars a century ago, we might already be exploring the moons of Jupiter, building cities under the ice of Europa, or sending ships to Alpha Centauri. But here we are, still earthbound. Mars is still out there, waiting. And maybe that's the point. The future is not written yet. The history we imagine tonight is just a glimpse of what could be, and maybe what still can be. So let me ask you this: if you had been born on Mars a century into colonization, would you call yourself Martian or Earthling? And before you go, don't forget, hit that like button before the Martians come and steal it. Subscribe if you want more journeys into alternate history, and share this video with your fellow dreamers. Because the next time, we'll be asking an even bigger question: what if we discovered alien life 500 years ago? Keep dreaming, stay curious, and remember, the future's right around the corner.